Welcome everyone. This is our second module on nutrition and labor productivity. In this particular module, we shall try to find out first the importance of nutrition in the analysis of labor market. We shall then try to find out what are the different forms of labor contracts. After that, we shall try to find out how is nutrition and work capacity linked. Lastly, we shall try to trace how can labor capacity restrict the entry of labor in the job market. Now, to motivate ourselves, let us start with a particular question. Why is this particular issue important? To find it, let us start with our traditional analysis of labor market. See, in our traditional analysis of labor market, we represent wage rate on the vertical axis and the level of employment in the horizontal axis. Now, we know that labor demand is negatively related to the wage rate. On the other hand, labor supply curve is positively related to the wage rate. So, the higher the wage, the lower will be the demand for labor. On the other hand, higher wages will attract more laborers in the labor market. Now, the interaction between the two curves gives us the equilibrium level of employment as well as wage rate. So far so good, but if we have a deeper understanding, we can find out that such analysis has a number of shortcomings. What are they? Firstly, such analysis do not take into account the particular form of labor contract. Secondly, it does not distinguish between labor and labor power. Thirdly, it assumes that each labor is indifferent between his or her current work and alternative employment. Fourthly, it does not accommodate the concept of involuntary unemployment. And fifthly, it cannot accommodate uncertainty, which is actually a dominant feature, particularly in agriculture. Now, let us consider the shortcomings one by one. What was the first shortcoming? The first shortcoming was that in that model there was no distinction between different types of labor contracts. Now, if we have to find out different types of labor contracts, then the first question that arises in our mind is that what are the different forms of labor contracts? See, if we look at the labor market, we find that mainly there are two types of labor contracts: casual or short term labor contracts and permanent or long term labor contracts. Casual labor contracts are generally made for the tasks that are comparatively easy to supervise. On the other hand, permanent or long term contracts are done in cases where the tasks are difficult to monitor or require some special care. In the context of agriculture, casual or short term contracts are made for the tasks like harvesting and weeding. On the other hand, Long-term contracts are made in case of applications of fertilizers, pesticides and water control. Now, given the existence of these two types of contracts, we can easily trace that the traditional analysis does not take into account the fact that each labor has different abilities and hence can face different demand curves. At the same time, the supply of labor in different markets may differ because of the preference of a labor in entering into a particular market may differ. Now, what about the second problem? The second problem is that the traditional analysis makes no distinction between labor power and laborer. However, it will be shown in course of our analysis. Indeed, it is the task of this module to show that some individuals or labor will not be able to enter into the labor market because of lack of nutrition. This lack of nutrition will not give them the required labor power to enter into the labor market. The third shortcoming in this regard is that each labor here is considered to be indifferent between his or her current work and alternative employment. This analysis, however, ignores certain crucial facts. First, it ignores that there is a sentiment of the worker associated with his or her current job. So, a worker is often sentimentally attached with his or her current job. Secondly, it also ignores the requirement of job specific skills. Thirdly, it also do not consider the fact that frequent shifting of jobs by workers can create an adverse impact in the mind of employees. So, there are certain problems. Regarding shortcoming 4, it was said that this model do not accommodate the concept of involuntary unemployment. In fact, this is a serious shortcoming because if you do not accommodate the concept of involuntary unemployment, you are actually ignoring a central part of reality. Involuntary unemployment arises in real world due to a number of causes. There can be lack of adequate amount of jobs. There can be lack of adequate work power of workers, and at the same time there can be lack of required skills. The fifth shortcoming of the traditional analysis is that it cannot accommodate uncertainty, which is a dominant feature of agriculture. Now, roughly it can be said that uncertainty can be accommodated in traditional demand supply of labor analysis by considering different demand curves between low and high harvest seasons. Now, even if we accept this, still then there is a problem. What is that? Even if we accept that shift, we cannot accommodate the procedure through which in real world the employers and employees cope with uncertainty a priori by writing contracts or making informal agreements that in reality ensures one party or the other. So, these are certain difficulties which we face while considering the traditional demand and supply curves of labor. Now given this, and to modify our analysis, we have to move to an important question. How is nutrition related to the labor market? Is there any relationship between nutrition and labor market? To find the answer, let us start with the basic energy balance equation within the human body. We take food. This food is used as energy input. Now this energy input is used in three ways. Initially, the energy input is used to maintain resting metabolism. Now what is resting metabolism? Resting metabolism is actually the energy required to firstly maintain body temperature, secondly sustain heart and respiratory action, and thirdly supply minimum energy required for resting tissues, supplying ionic ingredients across cell membranes. Now after this resting metabolism is met, energy is then used to maintain the energy required to work. So after using the energy to do our daily work, the rest part is next stored or borrowed. So these are broadly the three ways in which we use the energy. Now given this idea, we can now form a capacity curve. Now to draw a capacity curve, we have to represent work capacity in the vertical axis and income and nutrition in the horizontal axis. Now representing income and nutrition both in the same axis inherently assumes that most part of the income is used to maintain nutrition. Now this happens mostly in case of people whose income level is comparatively low. So lower income people mostly use their income to maintain their level of nutrition. Now given this, let us assume that N1 is the level of income which is required to maintain resting metabolism. So until and unless this resting metabolism is met with increase in income, there will be only a small increase in work capacity. Now once resting metabolism is met with increase in income, there will be a significant increase in work capacity. Now after the entire work capacity is met, that is we reach N2 level of income or nutrition, the rest of the energy is stored. So in this situation, increase in the income or nutrition level will not increase the work capacity. So the capacity curve initially becomes concave, after that convex, and then comparatively flatter. So this is the slope of a traditional capacity curve. Now giving the idea of work capacity curve, let us now find out what we find from this idea. See, initially we had the idea that it is the work capacity which determines the level of income. Now the work capacity curve tells us that income also determines work capacity. So, there is actually a circular type of relationship between work capacity and income. Work capacity determines income, income also determines work capacity, and so on. Now, after finding the relationship between work capacity and income, let us now move to a related concept which is known as piece rate. Now, what is piece rate? The definition of piece rate can be given in this way, that piece rate is actually income per unit of output. Now, if we consider the diagram in which we have drawn the capacity curve, we find that in that diagram work capacity or output is measured in the vertical axis, while income is measured in the horizontal axis. Now, in this diagram, therefore, if we draw a straight line, then the inverse of the slope of the straight line will give us the piece rate. Now, suppose there are two straight lines. In this figure, one is given in terms of a blue straight line and the other is the red straight line. Now, as the red straight line is comparatively flatter, by definition, this line will correspond to higher piece rate compared to that of the blue line. Now, given this idea about piece rate, let us now superimpose the capacity curve and the possible piece rates in a single diagram. Now, for our purpose, we have taken 4 different piece rates represented by V1, V2, V3 and V4. Obviously, V4 is greater than V3, which is again greater than V2, which is again greater than V1. Now, in this figure, if the piece rate is V1, then the level of work capacity is A. If piece rate increases to V2, work capacity becomes B. If the piece rate is V3, work capacity is C. On the other hand, if the piece rate is V4, work capacity is represented by point D. Now, what this particular figure tells us that once the piece rate increases from V2 to V3, there is a significant jump in work capacity. So, there will be a corresponding quantum jump in the labor supply. Now, this quantum jump will make the labor supply curve discontinuous at piece rate V3. Now, this is shown in the figure. So, the labor supply curve is initially positively sloped. It is then discontinuous at V3 and after that it again becomes a positively sloped continuous line. Now, if this is the shape of the labor supply curve, the next question that arises is, what is its impact on the labor demand labor supply decision? Now, to find this, let us now superimpose two labor demand curves. One is represented by the blue labor demand curve denoted as labor demand 1. The other is the red demand curve represented by labor demand 2. Now, if the labor demand is as high as that of labor demand 2, then the analysis of labor market is more or less like that of the traditional analysis. So, here the interaction of the labor demand and labor supply curve will give us the equilibrium level of employment and the equilibrium piece rate. But what about if the labor demand curve is as low as labor demand 1? See, at this labor demand level, the total amount of labor who are willing to supply their labor is OB. However, of this total amount of labor available, only OA amount of labor will be chosen. So, the laborers who are willing to offer labor in the region AB will remain unemployed, and this level of unemployment will be entirely involuntary. But what is the reason between this type of involuntary unemployment? Here the reason is not of lack of work or lack of skill, but it is actually due to lack of nutrition level. So here it is the low level of nutrition which is generating low work capacity, and which is in fact creating low access to the laborers in entering the labor market. So, nutrition and the ability of laborers to enter into the labor market is intensely linked. Given this analysis, let us now find out what we have learned so far. We started with the question that what is the problem with the traditional analysis of labor market. We find that the traditional analysis misses certain issues. Then we asked what are the different forms of contracts that we find in the labor market. And the answer is that there are mainly two types of contracts: casual labor contract and permanent labor contract. The third question was that how is nutrition and labor capacity linked? We find that the nutrition and labor capacity link is given by the capacity curve, which in fact shows a sort of S-shaped relationship. The fourth question was, what is the impact of such shape on the labor supply decision? What we find is that under this situation, the labor supply curve becomes discontinuous. As a result, some people will be unable to join the labor market due to low capacity owing to low level of nutrition. So, this is what we have for this module. Thanks for watching.